everyone, welcome to the lecture on Earth spheres and their interconnections. To start off with, we're going to be talking about the spheres, basically life's life support system. The Earth can be made up of several different spheres. The first one you're probably most familiar with, the atmosphere. This illustration here is of the geosphere, also known as the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, and the atmosphere. And we also have these other three here, the pediosphere, the cryosphere, and the magnetosphere, and those three we'll talk about soon. The atmosphere is the one you're probably most familiar with. That's the air layer that is from the ground all the way up to the edge of outer space. The first layer here, the troposphere, is the one that we are most familiar with because that's what we actually use for sustaining life here on the surface of Earth. The troposphere contains most of the oxygen that living creatures require, and it also contains important source of nutrients for plants, the nitrogen. And pretty soon we'll be talking about how nitrogen actually kind of gets fixed from the atmosphere down to the ground. The next layer is the lithosphere. This is the rock layer, such as this example here for the Grand Canyon. So the rock or lithosphere basically takes up the edge of the crust here of the Earth all the way down to the core. And there's different parts of the lithosphere. There's this upper part here that's basically kind of made up of the continents as well as the sedimentary rock that's underneath the oceans and lakes, as well as the rocks, the layer here right underneath the ocean crust and the core itself. The pediosphere is the soil layer. It's the layer just above the bedrock. It's a layer that's actually been made because of the biosphere, and it's been made over several thousands of years. The other thing that actually helped create the pediosphere is the hydrosphere and the lithosphere. Rock, as it kind of slowly gets broken down by wind or by water from the hydrosphere, all those different rock particles will actually trickle down and actually start to kind of help form some of the soils. And you can see this layer of soil here. This upper layer we call this topsoil. It's usually a dark layer of soil. It's thick and full of nutrients. And then this here is the next soil we call the biohorizon. And we'll be talking more about soils and their importance in future lectures. The hydrosphere is our water area, and examples of the waters would be things like oceans, streams, rivers, waterfalls, etc. But it also comprises of water vapor as well as precipitation up in the sky, such as snow and rain. And it also comprises the evaporation that occurs from, or also known as transpiration, that occurs from the biosphere up into the atmosphere when plants are undergoing photosynthesis. Most of our water is actually ocean water, so 97% of the water on Earth is saline. About 3% of that is actually fresh water. And of that fresh water, only a small amount is actually is accessible for us to actually use. And unfortunately, much of this water here is also being polluted. And when we talk about more about the hydrosphere or about the water resources, we'll learn more about this pollution in water. The biosphere is everything that is living on the surface of the Earth, so everything from the pediosphere up into the atmosphere. And of course, the biosphere can also actually go into the pediosphere itself, so things such as worms, etc., they're down in the soil, or things that are up in the atmosphere, such as birds and insects that are flying around. The biosphere, basically it's the interaction between both non-living, so for instance the atmosphere, the gases in the atmosphere, and the living creatures such as our flora and our fauna, like these giraffes here. The cryosphere is an interesting sphere, and this is what we'll be talking a lot about when we talk about Canada's Arctic and the Arctic regions and the two polar regions, both the Arctic and the Antarctic. The cryosphere is all of the Earth's surface that is usually water, but it's in solid form. either in snow or in ice. So examples of the cryosphere would be the glaciers up in the tops of mountains, or basically large continental glaciers, such as the one that's on Greenland. We also have snow, and we saw a lot of snow this weekend. We have sea ice, so the stuff that's covering over the Arctic Ocean. We also have frozen ground, so you may be familiar with the term called permafrost. Frozen ground, so permafrost is actually part of the cryosphere, and we'll definitely be talking about the permafrost later on in the lecture. Later on in the course. The last sphere is the magnetosphere, and the magnetosphere is basically kind of like a super shield around the Earth. It helps protect all of the biosphere, so both the plants and animals that live on the Earth. It protects us from any of the solar particles coming off the sun. So the magnetosphere is actually formed when the core within the Earth is actually spinning, and that spinning of the core, the iron core, helps to create a basically a magnetic force, which then ends up kind of coming out from both ends of the pole. So many of you have probably used a compass in the past. You know how the compass ends up pointing north. That is actually pointing towards the top of that magnetic sphere where it's coming out. The last sphere is one that you and I are most familiar with, and that is the Anthroposphere. And the Anthroposphere is the area or the sphere that humans have created. So very typical of the Anthroposphere is, of course, anything that is paved with asphalt, anything that's cemented, right, like such as this curb right here or along here, or anything like steel structures, etc.